Hi, welcome to this episode of Life Expressions. I'm your host, Chari Hinete Elon. Today, we're honored to have Matthew Sebastiani, a passionate community leader, dedicated advocate, and skilled policy analyst. With an impressive career across government, financial services, and biotech, Matthew currently works with the Bank of Canada and serves in various impactful roles, including president of Vancouver's Crohn's and Colitis Canada chapter. Diagnosed with IBD at just 18, Matthew's journey has been one of resilience, advocacy, and breaking down barriers. He has worked tirelessly to raise awareness and fundraise for a cure and support others in their IBD journeys, earning him multiple national awards from Crohn's and Colitis Canada. In this episode, Matthew shares his personal story, offers insights into daily life with Crohn's and colitis, and provides empowering advice for those navigating similar paths, from breaking stigmas to advocating for better healthcare. This conversation dives into the heart of resilience, community, and hope. Please welcome Matthew Sebastiani. Hi, Matthew.
Sherry, thank you so much for having me today.
I'm glad to have this conversation with you. Matthew, can you share your diagnosis story with Crohn's and colitis?
Yes, thank you, Sherry. So my journey started when I was 18 years old. I was in my second year of university. Sorry, it was my first year of university, my second semester, and I started getting sick. And it was early in the semester. I started experiencing things like abdominal pain, uh, washroom frequency. But for me, it was like clearly later when I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, it was kind of like the ulcerations that form in the intestine. And so they were bursting, bleeding, and it was very apparent when I went to the washroom. And so when I was diagnosed several months later, it was actually after the semester. So I experienced 4 months, I was down to like 115 pounds, and I'm not a big person or very tall either, but I was down, lost a lot of weight. It was challenging those 4 months or so that I was waiting for diagnosis. So it was, I was young at the time. I had no idea when I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis what it was, but, I was very sick, a lot of pain. So these are very challenging conditions to first be diagnosed with, and of course, then to live with them.
Yeah, how did it impact your life, especially that you were just on your first year as a student, right? A university student.
Yes. Well, I think what the most challenging thing is at that time was when I was diagnosed in the hospital after a procedure, the specialist said to me that you have ulcerative colitis and there's no known cause and no known cure. And I think those are very challenging. Now you're only 18 and you have your whole life ahead of you. And to be diagnosed with a condition that you don't know how it's going to impact your life. I think for me, that was the most devastating thing, frustrating in a way that, I didn't know what it was going to mean for my life. What might I have to give up? Because, am I able to, still achieve my goals and my dreams? Am I going to be able to finish university? Because that semester was a huge struggle for me. I still don't know to this day how I got through it. And did very well, but at the same time, I didn't know could I continue? I have 3 more years of this, and so, you also start questioning, like, why me? Like, what did I do wrong? If there's no known cause, like, but, how did I get this? No one in my
Yeah.
family has it. At the time, I didn't know anyone that had it because a lot of people with Crohn's or colitis don't really talk about it. So, it was just a very, shocking and devastating time, I would say, in that moment.
Yeah, and you mentioned like you had those doubts, but look at you, you graduated with honors in economics from Simon Fraser University, and you now hold an MBA in finance from UBC. You have definitely overcome that. But what was the most, like you've said, it was devastating. What was the most challenging part to overcome that diagnosis?
Yeah, I think for me, it was getting back into the right frame of mind because when you're diagnosed with something like this, I think mentally it's challenging, but it's also challenging physically.
Yeah.
But for me, it was just resetting and saying, no, you know what? I need to focus. Like this, some people, I have to be honest, like these are challenging conditions, but I will say that, if you compare to some other things that are out there, maybe things are worse. And I don't want to diminish what I have because it's challenging, but I do want to say that I just had to refocus and say, you know, this is going to be challenging. I think also being on some of the medicinal regimens in terms of, steroids to bring down the inflammation, because, this is, conditions that are autoimmune. You don't know when they're going to flare up. You don't know how long the flare is going to last. For me, it was, yeah, just, getting healthy was the main thing, focusing on health to get back to a state of remission. But I've been on cycles. I was diagnosed in 2011. I had a bad period in 2013, 2015. It always seems like every couple of years that I get these really bad flares and have to go on medicine that helps.
Yeah.
So I think for me, that was what I had done, was just, focus on the right regimen, getting in the right mental state of mind, and pushing forward to achieve my goals.
Yeah, that is very important, like having the right mindset, right? And focusing on your goals. But what does a normal day look like for you now?
Yeah, for me, a normal day when I'm in like a remission phase, and I'm so thankful because I found something that worked. I've been on a ton of different medication, and if anyone with Crohn's or colitis is listening, like I've been through it as well. I'm sure they have too. You start with pills usually, you have rounds of steroids, like I have
Right.
had, which those are very challenging. Right now, I'm on an infusion. I go every 8 weeks. It's working for me. I want to say now I'm like on my 30th dose or so. It's been a few years, but it's working. And I'm thankful for, this more innovative research that is coming out that is creating drugs on the market that help. But a normal day, it's so interesting because now, fast forward, I was diagnosed in 2011, and now, we're in 2024, going into 2025. And um, like what's normal? I don't know what normal digestion is anymore. And as long as today is just as good or better than yesterday, like, it's a good day. But I don't think things for me will ever be the same. But it's been so long
Yeah.
that I don't really know what that's like anymore. And so, um, yeah, that's something that I grapple with is, I am just thankful that I'm not worse than yesterday, because if things are stable, things are, going well, then it's a good day and I'll take it.
Yeah, wow. Like you are one of a kind because you focus on the good and then you don't know what's normal or you just have to deal with it. You are resilient. So, like, because it's not easy, we know that it's not easy living with IBD is not easy and challenges are always there. Don't know what a normal day looks like. What strategies, if any, do you apply and what do you think are the most effective way to handle like flare-ups or rough days?
Because it's autoimmune, we don't always know when you're going to get that flare up. And there's no evidence to suggest that anything you eat or, like, so it's hard. I think
Yeah.
managing, though, the condition is important. I think to focus on diet, exercise, stress, and sleep. And I've definitely tried to work. Exercise during university was always a little more challenging for me, but over the last couple of years, I've really dedicated like minimum 3 days a week. Like, have to do some physical activity. Diet, I've always paid attention to. I know what works for me and what doesn't. And people with Crohn's or colitis, not everything that works for one person is going to work for someone else. So you really have to hone in on your diet and understand what works, what doesn't. Some people can have gluten, some people can't. Some people can have certain, types of food, and others can't. But I think that's important. Um, but I think, in terms of strategies, I think it's also important to listen to your body. Like I know there's like I call it kind of like intestinal gurgling. It's like when, it's not your stomach gurgling, it's like your intestines. That's usually a first sign for me that I'm about to flare. So if I hear that or I feel that, I slow down. I think it's important to know your body and know what symptoms are the ones that are signaling to you like, hey, you got to slow down, because as you kind of mentioned, Sherry, like I lead a busy life. I love to be involved. I love to do as much as I can. But at the same time, I also recognize I live with a condition where I might need to slow down at some times. But I think so recognizing that sometimes the best accomplishment in a day is just getting out of bed.
Yeah.
And and other times it's, if you're able to, you just gotta, push yourself to do as much as you can. So I think those are some of the strategies that I kind of use while living with ulcerative colitis. And I know
Yeah.
others do that too, focusing in on, how is my stress, how is my diet, exercise, and sleep.
Yeah. Exercise, sleep, and diet. What kind of diet works for you?
Yeah, I try not to eat out a lot. I do try to keep things simple. I try to, have my, carbs, my protein, like I keep it simple and I don't use a lot of spices. For the most part, it's, salt, garlic. I know some people with Crohn's might not be able to have garlic, but I just try to keep things very simple.
Yeah.
And just knowing what goes into my food because sometimes it could be just that one thing that might irritate. And I do also, one of the big things is you have to stay away from like nuts and seeds. Sometimes, like even whole grains or like whole wheat is too hard to digest. So, sticking more to like white breads and rice. So it's a little bit opposite to what we might consider like a healthy diet, just because
Mhm.
um, you have an overactive immune system in your gut. Your gut thinks the good bacteria in your gut, like everyone has bacteria in the gut, but our bodies think it's bad. And so our immune system's attacking that good bacteria. And so, in a way, you actually need to have less fiber because having too much fiber is going to make you go to the washroom even more than you're
Yeah.
already going, especially when you're flaring. So, um, sometimes like the nuts and seeds can get caught in the ulcerations and they can cause infections and things like that. So I have to be careful of things that I'm eating and making sure like the seeds, the nuts, the whole grains, just trying to avoid that. But again, keeping things simple and just holistic, I would say in that sense.
Yeah. And for the past 13 years, you have been doing that. You have been very mindful of all those, right? But for a person like me who is non-medical, it was my first to hear about Crohn's and colitis when I met you and the IBD. And so I'm pretty sure there's a lot of stigma in this kind of disease. What would you like to clarify about the misconception about Crohn's and colitis?
Yeah, Sherry, and thank you for inviting me for this because I think I always take the opportunity to try to increase awareness for these conditions. And I will say, November is Crohn's and Colitis Awareness Month in Canada. So, such an opportunity to speak. But, I would say some of the misconceptions is that these are washroom diseases, you know, and they are. A lot of the symptoms are washroom related. But because of that, compared to some maybe other conditions that others live with, I feel like a lot of people don't talk about it. And
Yeah.
so we don't know that our friend or someone in our family might be living with Crohn's or colitis because they're uncomfortable to talk about what's been dubbed like kind of like these taboo washroom issues. It's more than that. These are very autoimmune systemic conditions. They can affect your joints. You can have inflammation potentially in your eyes. Like it's more than just the digestive system. When you flare, it can be very, you know, holistic through the body. So that's one misconception is like, let's bring down these barriers that, these are not just washroom diseases. The other thing that I would say is there's a lot of confusion between IBD and IBS. They are two totally different things. Like sometimes I'll say like, oh, I have ulcerative colitis or I have inflammatory bowel disease. Oh, and so and so has IBS that I know. They're actually very different.
What is
IBS
IBS?
is not autoimmune. Similar maybe symptoms in terms of like how your digestive system is being affected by such condition, but they are very different. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions is overcoming IBD versus IBS because there are similarities, but there are significant differences.
What are the significant differences?
Yeah, I would say like the biggest thing again is that autoimmune nature of IBD. It's immune system related, whereas IBS isn't. And IBD can be very systemic again through like the whole body where inflammation might, play a role, whereas IBS is not. So there are differences. Where the similarities are is of course like if someone their digestive system, they might use the washroom more often or things like that. But they are, yeah, in separate categories medically.
Yeah. You've mentioned earlier that not a lot of people are comfortable talking about it. Did you have any challenge or difficulty discussing this with your family, friends, or even workmates?
Yeah, it's always a challenge to know like how to talk about it and how not to. Like, I am very open about it now. But when I was first diagnosed, I mean, I was slightly embarrassed. And I thought, well, why should I be embarrassed? Like, other people are going through this too. I want to raise awareness. And that's why I got involved with Crohn's and Colitis Canada. But at first, here I am, an 18-year-old university student where you're writing exams. Like, you don't want your professors to necessarily know what you're living with, or your friends, or, classmates that you might have to work on projects with. Like, that was challenging at first because I didn't know how much I wanted to tell people. And no one in my family had the condition. So, apart from my immediate family, and I'm so thankful to have very supportive family and friends and a network of community. But at first, it was literally just, like my immediate family that knew. And but then I realized like the universities are very accommodating. I found out like, you can apply for accommodations, you can write exams in a different area where you can take washroom breaks without being penalized in terms of times. When I was in active flares, I like that was something that I had to use. And so I want to encourage anyone listening because the unfortunate thing is that most people with Crohn's or colitis are diagnosed before their 25th birthday. And so this is more of a young person's condition. And unfortunately, the incidence rates in children is growing. So
Yeah.
especially I want to just recognize that if you are pursuing further education, that, take accommodations where needed. Talking about it, I think is important in workplaces. I know sometimes that can also be challenging, but I have to say, I've never had an issue. I'm so thankful to have worked with employers that are very understanding. Um, and very accommodating as needed, like if I have to go for my infusions or I have to go to a medical appointment or something like that. So I think it can be challenging to talk about it because I mean, these aren't nice conditions to talk about, right? Like they
Yeah.
are, chronic conditions that have adverse symptoms. Um, but I think once you start sharing, you will be surprised at who you find out in your network also has it.
Yeah.
And so then people recognize, oh, now I can be more comfortable talking about this. And I, so many times, like in the community, because I've been so vocal about it, even on my social media, that people reach out and like, I have a friend that was just diagnosed. Would you be willing to talk to them? And I'm always willing to talk to people who are new in their journey. And so I think that's why it's important to talk about it because it helps
Yeah.
to raise awareness and it helps to also bring down some barriers.
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned that universities are good in accommodating this disease, right? Especially for the students. And so, do you think there is enough support for people who have Crohn's and colitis, like for yourself and for the others?
Yeah, I think that there is, a lot of support. I mean, could things always be better? Of course. And I think in one of those areas is just that investment in research for a cure, but also like research to find out what the cause is, because if we can
Yeah.
figure out the cause, we can prevent people from getting the condition. But I have to say, navigating, even through the healthcare system, we have to advocate for ourselves. It's a really tough environment, I think, right now, the healthcare system. There's long wait
Yeah.
times, it's hard to see a doctor. So I think you have to be that person to advocate, to push. Like if your doctor gave you a referral to a specialist, make sure like you're on a cancellation list. Make sure that if you're not feeling well, like really not feeling well, maybe you do have to go to the emergency and just get checked out if that's really your only option. I would say that in terms of support, Crohn's and Colitis Canada has a lot of information on their website, a wealth of resources, support groups, information. So I do think that there is and are resources available, but you do have to look for it and find it. So as a message to anyone listening that has Crohn's or colitis, there are resources. I would definitely encourage you to go crohnscolitis.ca and check out how the charity might be able to help you. And then, of course, medically speaking, just being your own big advocate.
Yeah. How can they advocate for themselves? Like, are there other specific communities, resources, or groups that can be beneficial to a person who has Crohn's and colitis?
Yeah, so for example, the support groups with Crohn's and colitis, I think, is a great way to just connect with others, to hear what you're going through, because we have chapters across, well, we have support groups across the country. There's chapters also across the country, but you might hear from someone in your community that has Crohn's or colitis and understand like how did they navigate, in particular, the health system in that
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Here in Canada, of course, health is a provincial issue, so it's different in each province potentially. And so I think just understanding how to navigate the healthcare system is important. I think if you already have Crohn's and colitis, one strategy that I do is, write down your questions for your specialist because, you don't see your specialist often. So make sure you write down your questions because if you leave the doctor's office, you're going to forget. Oh, I should have asked him or
Yeah.
her that. And I think that's something that you can do. And the other thing too is if you feel that, like, let's say you're really sick or you're going to the emergency, like maybe take someone with you to help be your advocate if you're just very ill. I think that's important to, because you might not, be in a capacity to, you're probably in so much pain, but having someone with you could also help, navigate the conversations with the doctors if you need that.
How has connecting with others who have similar experiences helped your journey?
That feeling of not being alone, because that's how I felt when I was first diagnosed. Here I am with a condition, no one I know has it. And so for me, being able to connect with others has been very helpful. I think connected with others, even my family. It's been helpful for that. But we're I would say like the kind of like my extended family is my chapter and my fellow Crohn's and colitis volunteers because they know what it's like to go through. They have a family member that is experiencing the condition. And so for me, having that community is so important because they understand. When we gather every first Sunday of June for Gutsy Walk, it's like we're trying to, we're coming together for the same cause. And I think that that is such an amazing show of support. So that's how I would say, like, connecting with people who understand, who can give you information, who can share that experience. And I think at the end, when we're talking about raising awareness at the end of the day, right? Like,
Yes.
we all have Crohn's or colitis, and we're trying to do that. And I think we also try to, you had mentioned I am an advocate for people that live with these conditions. One big thing, for example, is washroom access, and so we try to promote that. And being connected within the community, you meet others that are trying to do the same thing. How are they advocating? How are they getting businesses to improve their washroom access, or how are they getting their cities to promote washroom accessibility in parks or community centers or things like that. So I think by sharing ideas, but we're also coming together for the cause and to advance advocacy and to fundraise for research for a cure as well. So I think that that's been amazing to be able to connect. And I encourage anyone listening to, if you have Crohn's or colitis, to definitely go to crohnsandcolitis.ca, find your local community and just get involved. You don't have to volunteer, but just being even connected to that network, I think is just very beneficial.
Yeah. Do you know how many are the volunteers or members of Crohn's and colitis in Canada?
That is a good question. I don't know. In our chapter, we have good, like I would say, dozen that are
Okay.
committed to like the cause and volunteering. And then our extended, like we have, many people connected to our chapter. There's about 33,000 people in British Columbia that have Crohn's and colitis, and 1 in 40 people across Canada have Crohn's and colitis. It's one of the largest incidence rates in the
Yeah.
world. So, we're talking about over 300,000 Canadians that have Crohn's or colitis. So, the community is large, but at times maybe some people just aren't tapped into the network. And so I encourage people to, find us and just, you don't have to volunteer, like I said, but just to find us and, attend some events or just, attend an online session. And we have lots of info sessions as well, which helps people navigate their journey with Crohn's or colitis.
Yeah, that's great. Matthew, what would be your advice for someone who has just received a diagnosis? Like anything you wish you knew when you first started your journey?
Yeah, well, for anyone newly diagnosed, I just want to acknowledge that diagnosis. You're seen, and I wish you more good days ahead than, the challenging days. Um, I think for me, I would just say that, when you're diagnosed and you hear like, oh, there's no known cause, no known cure, I would hope at the same time that, people would tell you that you're still going to have a fulfilling life. When I was 18, I didn't know what that was going to mean for me. And so I would tell people, you're still going to have a fulfilling life. Yes, you're going to have new challenges. Like that's unfortunate, like that these are chronic conditions and there's no cure, but keep your dreams alive. Aim high, achieve your goals. You see, you know, in the IBD community, some very accomplished people, and setting goals, whether they're personal goals or professional goals or anything, like there's so many people that do achieve their goals. And so that's what my message would be for someone that's recently diagnosed, to just aim high and achieve your goals.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And earlier you have mentioned that you have changed once you have already realized that you have that diagnosis, that you have that chronic disease, you changed your mindset. What do you think is the mindset shift that had the most positive impact on your quality of life? You are living a very fulfilling life and one that advocates as well.
Oh, you're right, Sherry. And for me, I think it's also like, don't sweat the small stuff. Like I think, sometimes you want to like I do always want to do very well in everything that I do. But I think at the same time, like you have to look at the big picture. So sometimes it's just taking a step back, don't sweat the small stuff because sometimes, that stress is just gonna make you more sick, especially when you're in a flare. But I think for me, that mindset is one of determination and perseverance. I think you really need to tap into that because when I look back at my life, like I don't know if I would have accomplished everything that I have if I wasn't diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. In a way, I've had to overcome these challenges, but the condition has actually pushed me harder because I want to prove to myself that I can still do everything that I want to accomplish in life. And it's odd to say that, but like living with something where you're always overcoming challenges, you're also like it builds your resilience. And so when something else happens, it's kind of like, I've been through way worse than that. That, who cares? Like I'm gonna get through this. It's fine. So I think that that's really important. I think it's also, prioritizing your health, um, and just, having that mindset that the future, if you're in a flare, I've always found that, like, I know that this is kind of like, you're on a roller coaster. So maybe you're at the kind of the bottom and you're trying to like get better and come back to top. You know that those moments, like at some point you are going to get better. And so for me, I just live day by day, still trying to like tap into that determination and just be motivated because it can be very difficult, I think, mentally for people that live with Crohn's or colitis. But I've always tried to just have that mindset of determination, perseverance, being motivated. And I would say also kind of that mindset, like for me, I also realized that I've been through a lot, and so my passion is always to help others. And I think for me that that's something that I give back a lot to. And I notice a lot of people with Crohn's or colitis, they also give a lot of their time too. So it's it's been definitely an adjustment, but like I said, I've lived with it since 18. It's been over a decade, and yeah, it's been a journey, but trying to continue to just live out my life and achieve my goals and just work hard.
Yeah. Looking forward, Matthew, what are your personal goals? You've mentioned goals. What are your personal goals, despite or even maybe even inspired by having Crohn's and colitis?
Like I want to continue to be an advocate. I think for me that's just one of my goals, is to help others. Like I was definitely, when I was 18, I was sitting in a hospital bed, laying in a hospital bed, just being challenged. Like I've also had other journeys to the hospital. Um, you know, my work is my work and I really enjoy my work, and I love what I do, but I think I use a lot of my time outside of work to give back. That has always been my goal, just to, be a volunteer, make a difference. I don't like to necessarily like waste my time not being effective when I'm in my good moments and I'm healthier than when I'm like in an active flare. Like, I have been over the last 2 years or so, like I've found the right, regimen that's working for me and the medication. But, so as I'm in good health, I don't want to take it for granted. And
Yeah.
so every minute that I get, I want to be able to help people in the community, help causes that I'm passionate about, volunteer my time. And so I do that. Crohn's and Colitis Canada is just one charity that I volunteer for. There are others that I volunteer for, and I really just enjoy my time, advocating for those causes and those charities and nonprofits as well. So that's, I want that to continue to be my goal, is to maintain good health and give back my
That
time.
that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Matthew. If you could envision one significant change in how society understands or support those with chronic illnesses, what would that look like?
I'd say an inclusive society. I think a lot of people are putting a little bit more of a lens on accessibility these days, and whether it's businesses or government, everyone is putting a little bit more of a lens, and so I think that is important for people with Crohn's or colitis is to have that understanding, to give us a chance, not to judge us. Because again, remember, like kind of those washroom issues, like don't judge us. We have a lot of capacity and capability, and so maybe sometimes we just need the tools, the space, the resources to be able to be effective at the things that we're doing. So it's about helping to bring down barriers. So again, not to judge, to have some compassion. The other thing that I would say is that's really important. We just observed this in October, but Invisible Disability Awareness Week. So I kind of put Crohn's and colitis in the category of invisible conditions, right?
Yes.
You look at me, I look pretty healthy. If you saw me in person, I have a lot of energy. I'm, very active, but I have a chronic condition. And so
Yeah.
I think a lot of people that live, it doesn't matter what type of chronic illness that one is suffering with, sometimes you can't see it.
Yeah.
And so I would say just have compassion. Don't judge people. You don't know what's going on behind closed doors. And so I think it's just being that friendly person. Just be kind, because you really don't know what people are going through. So I would say that is really important, especially for those that live with invisible conditions.
That is very powerful. Thank you so much, Matthew. Thank you for sharing your story and your journey with us. And thank you for joining us in this powerful episode of Life Expressions with Matthew Sebastiani. His story, guys, is a reminder of the strength it takes not only to live with a chronic condition, but to rise above it and make a meaningful impact. From his advocacy with Crohn's and Colitis Canada to his work within the community, Matthew has shown us the true spirit of resilience, perseverance, and determination, as he has said, and the importance of speaking up and reaching out. We hope you found inspiration and valuable insights to carry forward. If you or a loved one is impacted by IBD or Crohn's and colitis, know that you are not alone. Join the conversation by sharing your thoughts in the comments or answering our poll. What's one way you've found strength through adversity? And as Matthew would invite, visit crohnsandcolitis.ca to know more, and perhaps you can be part of a community. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, I'm your host, Chari Hineta Elon. Keep listening, keep expressing, keep connecting, and keep living fully. Thank you once again, Matthew.
Thank you.
See you on the next episode of Life Expressions.